Greetings, all. I'm your host, Sully, and we're doing yet another roundtable discussion. Some of the topics will be heated, but for the most part, we'll just kind of try and reflect on why they're heated in the first place, and if we had some additional resources, what we would do to address these issues in this time. Here, exclusive guest tonight, we got Radell Lewis from the Purple Political Breakdown podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, this should be an interesting conversation. Talk politics and
It was fun to kind of figure it out beforehand. We're like, wait, would that amount to anything? No, let's go in this direction.
Nah, I'm with you. Yeah, for the most part, I focus on trying to talk about like solutions and things that are more relevant to what's going on domestically in America. But I obviously, when the time arises, I obviously pay attention to the international stuff too, such as Palestine, Ukraine, stuff like that.
Isn't it weird, speaking of that, how I'm not seeing as much about the Ukraine-Russia war?
Yeah.
Anymore. It seems like that has taken the narrative now. And it's like, well, that's bad, but what about those guys?
Yeah, mainstream definitely is not focused on that, and social media too. And I think the reason why is Ukraine, Russia was much more straightforward. The only people who had an issue with Ukraine, Russia is the people who had an issue with sending money to Ukraine, but they not necessarily were rooting for Russia. So that was the thing. Right now, people have sides. It's Palestine side and Israel side. So it's
more like who's your favorite wrestler, reality show star, or politician, and they're beating each other up on a tar mat for ratings.
Exactly. So that's why it's more, because people are talking about it more. It's more divisive. That's why.
Gotcha. There is no end. So makes for more headlines. So this was cool to plan. We were just like, hey, we could talk about this, but I don't watch that. And I was the same way. It's like, I don't want to just have a discussion where we just rant for like hours and there's no real answer that we've assessed. And so I just figured, we could just kind of circle back and forth and just talk about certain topics that social, political, that we feel like we could have an answer for if we had more resources, if we had another bigger platform, or just in any other atmosphere, and we could just kind of circle around, and it can be something that you do feel is doable, or one that you would love to do, but you don't think you have the time and resources or even money at this time to really want to do that. But in a better place, you probably would. It can be as big or small as you want it to be. I guess I could start off. I guess I was just thinking one thing that's just commonly kind of seems to come up is it's even more heated nowadays, it seems, than guns or birth control and everything like that. And this one is the topic of sex ed. And in my mind, I think that just should be taught at any school, regardless of your politics or anything, because if you don't want to have this conversation, you got to kind of teach your kids,
Yeah, I do think that sex education is like important knowledge. Like, sometimes people on the right get a little bit too into the weeds. Like, I get what they're trying to stop, but then they go too far, which tends to happen all the time, because there's no denial that I guarantee you probably were at school and you learned about pregnancy and puberty and all that stuff.
Yeah,
the parents should have the conversations, but the parents don't always have the.
And then they get so annoyed when someone doesn't wear rubber, and they're like, "Hey, you're a baby daddy to this, girlfriend of yours at school." It's like, well, yeah, because you guys didn't have this conversation.
Exactly. So sex education for sure matters. What we can have the conversation is what is said in the education. What is
if you want to word it a certain way, like don't get graphic, I can understand that. But it seems like everyone's just like, oh, bad. Oh, it's pornography. I'm like, what? We're not even seeing any photos.
Yeah, so I mean, what I remember from my sex education is that it was really not a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't know what's being taught nowadays in
I have
school.
no idea. I'm afraid to find out, actually. It's like
Yeah.
Texas, they were kind of, if anyone really had some detailed questions, they would stay after class. But for the most part, people kind of laughed it off, and not in a crude way. They were just like, "Oh, so that's what that one comedian was joking about," and we kind of just we smiled without snickering, and we moved on. It wasn't awkward to where we're like, "Oof, I hope no one saw me ask that question." And it's like, yeah, it was
Yeah.
simple, but it was weird because I'm in a very arguably backward state where everyone seems to get heated about everything from gun control to what teachers do, and it's like, well, I don't know how we flew out of there alive and no one made a stink about it.
Yeah. I mean, you can attribute that to a lot of different
They
factors,
weren't
but at
paying
the very,
attention.
yeah, at the very least, what is should make sense to everybody is that kids are going to learn about sex somewhere.
Yeah.
So being as educated as possible is important. Can it go too far? Yes, there's those weirdest
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm going to point this out, weird, very left teachers who want to teach them things that they shouldn't be teaching. That's a very small minority of teachers. They're doing that.
Yeah.
So it's not,
Even in
I think it's,
theater, they're only gonna really go there if you really like open the bar. Like you open that question, they say, "Oh, they gone this far. I guess they want to go there." But yeah, I mean, I only had like maybe one person who was maybe offering there, but they were like a teacher assistant, and they
yeah,
were only going to people who kind of wouldn't stop talking, and they would just go out in the hall in a quiet room, say, "Okay, we're going to talk about this and that. I don't recommend bringing that up here and there. We'll get to that. That'll be on the test."
right.
Um, and but I didn't see anyone sign any waivers like permission to teach your kid this. It was weird. I was so surprised. Now I bet you I will bet 50 cents on it. Maybe I bet $20. Someone's probably having to have that conversation now. Permission to teach your kid. The most I saw was religions of the world.
Yeah, I
Permission
mean,
to teach them about other variations on Catholicism and Islam.
the moment you open Pandora's box for specific topics, then you're gonna open it up for other topics. So that's just bound to happen. Now, if the looming trickle down effect is that parents, that's what I'm focusing on, parents
Yeah.
become more involved in their kids' education, I'm not necessarily mad at that. If they
Yeah.
want to be more involved, that's a good thing, that actually, to be
Mm-hmm.
more involved into your kids' education. So if that's what happens as a result, if they still go like, "Oh yeah, I'm not signing this waiver. I'm going to teach you all you need to know," hey, then go ahead, do it.
Right.
So
That makes sense as opposed to I'm shutting you down and I'm not giving a reason. I'm gatekeeping, you know.
yeah,
And I'm mad that you don't know how to do this. I mean, I used to work live concert events. Perfect contrast. And I had guys who were completely rude to me. One of them even was a jerk and tripped me almost with the wires. I'm like, this is a lawsuit waiting to happen. I'm like, oh, why don't you know how to do this? I'm like, because this is my first day. I don't know how to, wire all these electronics. I was just told they needed handyman. And next thing you know, go over there. And the other guy's like, oh, I don't need you. Go back to him. It's just like, I can't possibly learn this if you don't sit down for like 10 minutes and let me inside your world.
and break it down. Yeah, I agree.
And after a while, it was very clear they just wanted to just, you know, get away with being jerky. And I just said, okay, I have given you enough of my time. I'm done.
Yeah, people need to provide intention behind their anger.
Intention. Yes.
Always important.
What's your take on kind of led up to it really good with kind of media perspective and everything, both on air and off air. Do you feel like more people should open a dialogue on like double standards?
Um, as of right now, double standards are, commonplace. The problem is not necessarily that double standards exist, because that's always going to exist.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The problem is that people are just too narrow-minded in terms of
Yes.
belief that they can't understand why it's a double standard.
Hmm.
right? So it's okay to be biased toward your side because people have a value system that they live by and that they believe is the right. It's you think you're morally good to an extent, fine, whatever, but you got to open up your perspective much more. You got to broaden your horizons and be able to understand at the very least why this person is believing what they're.
Instead of, I think I trust this person, but I can't say why. They got a bigger Ferrari, they got a bigger mansion.
Yeah, so
I'm
that
sure they
also plays
do.
into the being ideologically captured to the point where, oh yeah, I support this. I hate this side because there are millionaires who get donation from other millionaires, but you're also supporting a millionaire who gets donations
You're right.
from
You got to
other
go a little
millionaires.
more
Like,
deeper. I would, if there was a classroom setting, I guess to open up that chat, I would just say, I would have simple slogans like two wrongs don't make a right. Just to, someone will eventually kind of get that, hopefully.
yeah, and for the most part, I think it's they get stuck into these headlines. They don't really
Yes.
understand why they're upset about whatever they're being upset. Once you really learn and understand even why you are supporting who you're supporting, you'll be able to kind of figure out, does this truly align with what I believe in? And most of the time, this plays into the double standard. You're going to find out that once you really deep dive what you believe in and what you hate, they're one and the same. You're gonna realize
Yes.
that maybe I shouldn't be supporting what I'm supporting.
Bingo. If I hate this certain person on social media, it better be more than just they misspoke one day and took a tweet down, 48 hours later. It's like, are they commonly doing this? Are they
Yeah.
trolling people, infuriating? Or let's put that to the side. That could be their social media manager speaking out of turn for all we know. But are they just saying stuff that just is socially or morally reprehensible that you're just like, I can't get behind this person, resourceful as they may or may not be, and it is funny seeing conversations on Jeff Bezos versus Elon Musk wars. It's like, well, they got a lot of skeletons in their closet, but I hope
Right.
someone can break down who angered them more instead of I just picked a side just because I've always liked their site, man. Uh,
Exactly. Um, yeah, just think a little bit more carefully on why you believe in what you believe. That's
mhm. uh, do you have a option that you would like to suggest a solution to in some capacity?
so something that I've definitely become an advocate for, and it kind of plays into a current issue or policy that has been implemented, is regarding social media. Now, if people aren't aware, in Florida, Ron DeSantis signed a bill that bans social media for kids under 14 years old. So
Ah,
it's not like how it was before where you can lie about your birth date on like MySpace. Now they're
mhm.
going to make it much more strict, and if you want to go on social media, you would have to get like direct permission from a parent. Now, the solution I'm going to propose is not necessarily that I dislike the reasoning behind the ban, because I do think there is something to be said about social media and its impact on the youth, but more so, I would go a different route with it. I would go the
Yeah,
route of separating social media for adults and kids. Social
that's a
media,
good idea compared to it's kind of like the SOPA bill. Remember when they introduced that and it's like, well, yes, I agree there should be ways to monitor illegal activities on there, but you're doing this just so that certain businesses can hide some of their dirty secrets and Amazon results can be top, number one on, a Google search and all these other middlemen get filtered out and unless I have a VPN, I can't see them. You know,
right.
it's like you say, it's got to be more delicate as opposed to sneaky or to appease, one demographic.
Exactly. When you put a policy into place, you want to have a meaning behind it, behind any kind of backhanded thing that may exist. And there might be good intentions behind banning social media to the youth. Like I said, there is some validity to
Yeah,
it, but social media is a part of life nowadays, and contacting
right.
people and kids should have social media, but they should have a kid version of social media that's heavily moderated and has very specific tools, and make sure the algorithm is very set in a very specific way so they aren't basically corrupted by what is on adult social media behind all that crap that's over
Bingo.
there. So
This is lovely,
that's what
my
we need.
dude. This is great. Um, did you ever have any teachers in your family?
Teachers? No.
Educators?
My dad was a psychologist, but no
I
teachers.
no, that's a good start. My grandmother would do some teaching and counseling briefly, but my mother taught for like 2 years and then had to give it up. She was at a real backwards, like inner city school where, long story short, no one wanted to learn anything and they were kind of forcing everyone to pass their students. Just didn't make any sense. And you're like, so they're not going to make any efforts because we can't technically fail them. That's what you're telling us. But the biggest issue was it was a very well thought out tech company that was helping, people do journalism and web design and everything. Just great skills that anyone could use at any age. And long story short, we were kids once. If any student got caught, surfing inappropriate content or playing games, they had to have their hard drive cleaned out and then their laptop was returned to them later. But that was a problem because they would keep getting assignments. And so those went kaput as well. So it's like, did you get last week's assignment? No. It was different then, it was in the 2000s, early 2010s before we could figure out, hey, there's a way to keep it on the cloud so you always have it,
All right.
and I don't have to keep erasing your hard drive because you watched something inappropriate for school after the billionth time. Oh,
Yeah. I mean, they say all the time in terms of these social media companies that they are moderating to an extent, but if you just separate the platforms, you can make sure that the moderation is very specific for child safety and child attention. I mean, YouTube went out of their way and made a kid version of YouTube and a adult version.
yeah. This last year, they now require every time you upload something, they're like, this for kids? If there's an F-bomb, then probably not.
Yeah, they're completely different platforms, and there's no reason why all the other social media companies can't do the exact same thing.
I mean, right? Yeah. Oh, um, that's a good option. Kind of looking more at objective, like kind of like you have a rating for a movie. I will always see someone bring their kid out of a movie, and it's like, well, the rating's there in giant letters. Why is this a mystery?
Yeah, exactly.
I saw. I'm sure you heard people did that with something like the South Park movie back in the day, as well as Deadpool, and it's like, well, just because it's a cartoon or superhero doesn't mean it's for kids.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people are learning more and more that just because it's animated, just because it's a cartoon, just because it's superheroes, just because it's nerdy, that does not correlate to being kiddie. That has no
Yeah,
correlation.
I still see people do it with video games. They're like, I don't care if you shoot up a bunch of soldiers as long as, you don't bring a gun home or you don't watch that one intense program on, the CW or TNT after school. It's interesting how it's a different format and it does confuse me even more. It's like, oh, so I can show gore on a primetime TV show, on a hospital show, but I can't. If I show this in this movie, it might risk getting a hard PG-13 or an R, regardless of intent.
Nah, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, parents have no reason to be ignorant nowadays. Just
Right?
know what your kid is doing. There's really no
What did
excuse.
you do? What did you do? I'm sure you got it with video games all the time. It's like, how did that kid get that M-rated game from GameStop? Did their brother forge their ID or something?
Yeah, if I mean, I wouldn't. I'm not like one of those people who think that, oh, kids need to be sheltered all the time. Like
No,
you
I'm
just gotta pay attention to what your kid is doing. That's what you have.
yeah.
You have to
If,
be there.
then no right to be offended when, like there's like it's like kind of repeatedly, I'm sure you've heard metaphors like a dog expecting anything different when they keep running into an electric fence. It's like, well, you've had, third time's the charm. You've had so many warnings. You can't get out of here.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's barriers. There was the TV rating in the top corner. There was the poster. There was the TV ad that said viewer discretion advised. I think I think that's enough warning.
No, exactly. At this point, people need to stop trying to take a step backwards in terms of technology, in terms of entertainment and social media. Everything is just going to keep going forward. So it's up to you to adapt to what it is, and it's up to society to create tools to ensure that parents can adapt properly, because parents are only so smart. So it's also up to society to make sure that they have the tools to ensure that they adapt. And one of those tools, like I said, is a separate social media platform for kids. And that's just the case. And parents can only pay attention to so much.
Absolutely. Well, so we've talked a bit about social media, education. Would you like to maybe, I guess, if there's ever a social or economics class, it'd be interesting if they always kind of seem to want to teach about just, tax cuts and stock markets and everything. But I wonder if they've ever taught about unemployment and other harsh scenarios that can happen at any time.
I mean, I do think public education is pretty inefficient nowadays.
Yeah.
They 100% could do a better job in preparing teenagers that are about to become adults, understanding taxes, understanding unemployment, understanding, if need be, welfare, Medicare, how to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
These are
And the risk.
things, exactly. These are things that can be taught much more efficiently. Obviously, you can learn them themselves, but if education is there to educate, then if we're going to make the same argument that sex ed should be taught, then there's really no excuse for economic and finances not also being taught at a important level, arguably one of the most important levels, because that's when you're out on your own. This is all stuff you have to do. This is not a choice. You have to know about all this stuff. So we should do a better job in terms of public education and teaching this. Of course, you can argue that the parents can be there too, but public education is there to educate when the parents can't. It's just a matter of the situation.
Right. I would like the security guards to be a little more astute, I guess, at school. They're probably the only guys I'd be comfortable being armed, I guess. I know that's a heated topic, but mainly I also would just love if they could really just be on the lookout for bullies. Obviously there's always going to be someone who sneaks for the crack, but if you can have someone who's actually just realizing, hey, this guy's, this kid's, extorting another kid for money or threatening to take him outside and beat him up after lunch, that can still be easily avoided instead of wait for, just suspend both and get over it.
Yeah, I mean, I've said on my podcast episode when I talked about mass shootings in particular, and especially at schools, that I don't see the argument against security guards. Security guards are one, I've said this in kind of bullet formatted. One, obviously, that creates more jobs, which I'm sure the right is always an advocate for. That's what they say anyway.
If police are off duty, security can still come in,
Either police officers or a private enterprise that has security guards. Regardless, you'll be able to find a security guard that should be qualified enough, make sure that they are vetted properly, and then they're to defend their school. I don't see why a parent would say, hey, yeah, I want less security of a place where my kid will be 8 hours of the day. I don't see the argument against that necessarily. And if they're trained, one, if they're a police officer, having a gun, obviously, but two, if they're a hired security guard that is vetted properly, which you can find a lot of places, it should be fun for them also to have a gun, right? So they are there to protect and just in case. That's what security has always been, a just in case scenario. And then you also made another good point to ensure that they can be that that force to alleviate.
Don't just stand
friction.
there while 5 people are ganging up on someone in the
Yeah,
locker room.
they can handle fights. They can handle bully situations, bully scenarios. They can handle friction between teachers and students. That is, apparently, students are getting much more disrespectful. We see the clips on TikTok all the time. So they have a lot of uses potentially, and there's really no good argument why we shouldn't have security guards.
Totally. I can understand not being comfortable with other students and what have you, but then there's others where it's like, what's going on here? Like,
Yeah, I mean, even comfortability, I don't really buy as a legit argument because school in itself is going to be uncomfortable for the kid the moment they arrive. They're meeting a stranger. I mean, their first time going to school. They're meeting new kids, they're meeting new adults, and they're going to meet a new principal. You know who else you're going to meet? A new security guard. You'll get used to it, just like you got used to all the kids and the teachers and the staff over there and the
yeah,
janitor. You'll get used to it. It's a security guard. You'll be fine. So it's not really a valid argument, I'll be honest.
totally. Circle around. You don't have to be armed at all times. You can have a stick with you if you need to, but like, just, don't treat it like a prison.
Yeah.
Uh, well, seems like we could also, I guess, educate people on like how to save money and just one thing I always got taught growing up is it'll always be around. It doesn't apply to all things, but it's like there's no rush. You're gonna live past 16. If you're not self-destructive. Um, I guess we could just also in some of these economic class and just other even more personal classes just have people open up discussions on just uh more goal setting. What do you want to have when you get out of here? you know don't shame them if you don't want to do college. Well, what is your other avenue besides just doing your family business or mowing lawns?
Yeah, the discourse regarding after high school activities is becoming more and more interesting as more and more students are getting motivated to not go to college. And
Mm,
then now there is the additional motivation now that the NIL exists that you can get paid while you're in college, but that's still going to be only for a select few. So those people are going to be incentivized, of course, but the people who are not the athletes, the people
yeah,
who don't know what they want to do, they don't have a direction. As of right now, they are getting pulled in different directions. Society's telling them go to college. Their parents are
yeah,
telling them go to
against your will.
college,
Yeah.
but social media is telling you not to go to college. So
Hmm.
it's going to be tough for kids without direction to know where to go. And my personal opinion about it, this is my take, of course, is that if you have no direction, then going to college won't necessarily help you. It won't guarantee to help you.
Yeah.
Now, there are a lot of resources out there that you can take advantage of, that you can learn from. You can learn online. You can do, I mean, even if I were to grant the college route, people shame it. They're stupid for shaming it. But community college is an amazing resource to go to get very, very, very affordable post education. And then you get
Oh
your
yeah. At least
general
get that
credits out of the way.
associates. Yeah.
So yeah, you go to community college or you go and do an online school. These are all much more affordable measures, and you get the exact same degree for the most part when everything's said and done. After a community, you go to a real college for the last 2 years.
Absolutely. And if you want
So
to stop there, what do you want to do to implement it as opposed to just rely on good luck and
exactly. So if you want to go to school, there are more affordable measures that should be taught more promptly in schools, that these are resources that you should do if you have no direction. Yeah, college was fun for me, but was it worth it? I think you can argue not if you don't take advantage of the resources. This is more specifically for people who have no direction. People who
Mhm.
have no direction are not going to take advantage of all the tools that they are given. So at that point, you don't got direction. Okay, I'm give a more affordable option. Give you the opportunity to not make a damning mistake. Lessen your load on yourself. Maybe even Go learn some things through some prompts online. There are plenty of things to learn for free online, even the library, for
Right?
example.
With YouTube, I'm finding so many other things. I'm like, I wish I had that my senior year.
Exactly. And figure out your passions. Obviously, you can go explore. People struggle with like finances and stuff when it comes to rent. I think people just get a misguided notion on it. You just gotta
Mhm.
do your research, find a proper place, get a roommate, get an affordable job, figure out what your passion is. You can do all of this stuff at a very, very young age, and you will be fine. It's just when you procrastinate and don't really look into it and just don't do anything and are lazy, you're not going to go anywhere regardless if you go to college or not. So nobody's going to help.
Absolutely. Hitting on that last part, it does seem like a lot of people like to get bored and then don't know what would do better. It's like, well, let's go for a walk. Let's clear our mind, instead of, I hate this. I want to escape it, but I don't know how. You know? And I get it. It is very overwhelming. In my experience, uh, academic advisors were pretty much, it was kind of like a sports team. Hey, I would love for you to be part of our department. I would love for you to take these classes. And they asked after the fact, do you want to take it? And I was like, oh, no, I didn't want to take it to begin with. I don't know why you keep mentioning it. So it would be
Yeah.
cool if they actually stopped getting political and said, hey, staff has to get along and we can share, instead of just getting in fender benders and you hear after class that, hey, one professor got into a heated argument with another one because, they didn't reserve the right studio or they wanted this person to give more extra time and effort into this class versus that one. It's like, well, come on. No. And my brother even got into this in high school. He was both great at playing clarinet and doing baseball, and teachers, again, they were doing Russian roulette. You got to pick one or the other. It's like, well, why? Shouldn't have to spin the dial. He shouldn't have to choose if he really loves both. But
Oh, it's definitely a little touch and go. If you're capable of doing both at a high level, then sure.
yeah.
But at the same time, both require practice, both require time, and time
Oh,
is
totally.
finite for sure. So I do think there is something to that, but you're going to be sacrificing a lot if you give something your time. And for a lot of people, or from my point of view, I'll point that out.
That's fine.
From my point of view, is that when you are doing so much and I was pretty busy, but if you're doing something like music and sports, sometimes what you can sacrifice is either your education or, even worse, I would argue, your social life, because you'll be
Yes.
practicing clarinet all the time or you'll be practicing sports all the time. So yeah, if you are passionate about both and that's the only two things you want to do, there shouldn't be any limitations to that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if you want to really be great at something, for the most part, you got to choose one. You have to choose one, and that's just the case.
No, that's fine. Uh, and for me, it just sounded like maybe he should have just tried it for maybe a month and then, called a spade a spade. Like, hey, I can't handle both. But I don't know. It was just hard to tell if the teachers were just being very territorial or if they really had just seen it happen too many times and they were just trying to be better safe than sorry.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's fair. I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell you, but there's
I can't. I wish.
some teachers care a lot. Some teachers care about what they're doing. So good teachers mean a lot when it comes down to these situations.
True. And I feel like we should have a conversation about money. I feel like a lot of people can get taken advantage of. They borrow money. They don't, but they only view the friend as just that, hey, free money.
We'll return after these messages.
The Jacked Up Review Show podcast is honored to be part of the Blind Knowledge Podcast Network. Join anytime, talk the talk, and enjoy yourselves. There's something enlightening for everyone with this crowd of cool cats. Check them out.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, "Give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win." On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast recs and booty debates. Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Brentfast time. Listen at Brentfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
I should be able to judge someone on their character as opposed to just, hey, how much do you have in the bank? You're the cool kid.
It's tough because throughout the entirety of human history, the one who had the most resources was the guy.
Right.
That's just
buys everyone drinks.
that's just, it is what it is, because there is a hierarchy in life. There always will be a hierarchy in life. There's those who succeed, and then there's those who do not. There's the leaders, there's the followers, there's the chiefs, and there's the Indians, as I say. So that's just the name of the game. Now, should you be able to look past that? Of course. I don't even think money inherently should be the end all be all. The character should be, but the character doesn't mean anything if you can't do anything yourself in terms of being self-sufficient, in terms of impact, your notoriety, your character, the qualities of who you are more important. But those qualities, to really be as potent as people want them to be, that would also equate to having money. It's more so how I see it is that there are those people who are terrible. They have certain qualities, are terrible, and can make a lot of money. They can luck into money, or they can be in the right niche. As of right now, it's way easier for the wrong people to get a lot of money because of social media nowadays. And that's probably, you can definitely attribute that to like the capitalist system. But there are also a lot of people who have a lot of money who earned it the right ways, and because of who they are, that's how they made the money. So yeah, you should look past the money, you should look at the character, but sometimes the only reason why they have the money is because of the character.
Yeah, no, that's a good conversation to have too. It's like, hey, this person can be your coworker versus your friend, or social friend, but not personal friend,
Yeah.
Uh,
For the most part, when it comes down to it, though, it's good to just be educated. I think people, the best thing I can say to people is that don't hope on luck to get a whole bunch of money.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Whether it's gambling or the lottery, or hoping you find $1 million on the street, or even social media. Social media is a very competitive market, but people think, I go viral, I get rich. That is not how it works. Now, you can play the algorithm, sure, but even playing the algorithm requires a certain level of effort and ability. Now, there's easy ways to make money, of course. You can argue drugs. You can argue a lot of the things that OnlyFans is right now. But
yeah, no, that's true too. It seems like also everyone likes to do the whole, all of this is bad. It's like, well, let's actually have a conversation on that. Like, do you want to be a sex worker? Do you want to sell legal drugs?
Yeah, I'm sure people don't necessarily want that, but they are people who are clouded thinking that the money will put them on where they want to be. And then they find out that this is not where I want to be oftentimes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a misguided notion.
Totally. It's very confusing that, again, like it kind of goes back to square one. If you don't want people asking questions about this, why not just open up the conversation, and put it to bed?
Yeah, I do think as of right now, I preach consistently on my podcast that having a conversation with people shouldn't be as difficult as people believe it to be.
I will gladly go in the opposite direction after I've gotten the answer, instead of you looking at me saying, please stop asking that. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's a shame that people think that discourse is so impossible, because in reality, people are more alike than they are different oftentimes. But again, as I said earlier on, people are ideologically captured. They have preconceived notions that cloud their perceptions of people, which is not a good
Yep.
thing.
Yeah, I have gotten that a bit, like kind of the stink eye, like you're clearly trying to anger me. I'm like, no, last I checked, it was your job to answer this question. If it's a dumb question, yeah, I'll be the judge of that. I mean, if it's not clear, then people are going to keep asking it.
Right.
Ah, tricky. Well, no, there's just some good issues too. Going back to schools, I kind of feel like gyms should start doing like more sponsorships with schools. If they want to do the whole, hey, we encourage these kinds of workouts and everything, but instead of getting, you know, it's kind of like how people will do the whole education could be free arguments. It's like, well, I would love for that to be. It's likely not going to happen anytime soon because, again, it's easier to misinform and not make any money and make money off of people's education. So, if anything, uh, we could at least ask for, food is also another topic, but if anything, I think fitness could be a better uh, opening where we could encourage people to have more, uh, you know, affordable and easier workout areas instead of just, have every excuse in the world to get distracted and not work out.
Yeah, for me, I mean, we talked about a lot of things that are important in setting them up to be a proper adult for the most part.
Yep.
I will be very clear when I say this. And for a person who got very lazy during COVID and put on a lot of weight, now I'm used to being in the military and used to being an athlete. So I just got really, really lazy. It's not okay to be overweight. I just don't, I will never abide by that. Now, if you want to say
Yeah.
certain people are attractive, I don't care. In terms of the health aspect, it's
Mhm.
not okay to be overweight. So more fitness or better fitness in schools. I mean, I always loved PE in schools. PE was like obviously the best program. I don't see why now we can't have more fitness classes
Yep.
in terms of, doing something. There's obviously physical fun things you could do, but there's a lot of equipment in a lot of these schools. Both schools I went to had a weight room. I know it's usually for the high school team, but they can't use it all the time during school, so other students should be able to use it as well. So
Bingo.
yeah, we should be able to not only help them be fit, but also inform them on how to be fit. I do think that is very important. America is way too obese, so we
Yeah.
need to be healthier people. Come on.
That's a good point. I see similar kind of conversations when people go, it's okay to be ignorant. I'm like, well, if you can avoid this confusion or not knowing about something important, it's not really something you want to keep giving excuses to. It's kind of just encouraging failure, especially if you
Yeah,
got to learn about it eventually.
no, exactly. Being the best version of yourself is something everybody should strive for, and being healthy and fit is part of that for sure.
I mean, I've gone back into working out just because I was suffering from insomnia, and it was just good to make. Just then I find, just kind of like anything, it just seems like I've noticed that people kind of get thrust into it, and if they get bored with the sport, they don't want to, or just any kind of whatever the workout is. It's like, well, find a different workout. If you want to make it more mindless, but still it does something good for your body, do that. I'm doing swimming right now. I'm doing high intensity workouts is a good way to save some time. Just, walk fast, then go for a 30-second jog, and then back to walk, and then repeat as many times as you want. It seems like there's so many shortcuts now that still get it done without it being an inconvenience or a distraction, or again, going back to, I don't have the time or money. Yes, you do. You have to make it.
Yeah, that's definitely not a good excuse. Humans are not designed to be overweight and not fit anyway. Like, no animal
Mhm.
is designed to be that way. We are designed to be active. And even no one, I'm not even saying you need to be like pro shape, not even gym rap shape. You don't need to bench 2 plates. You don't need to run a mile in under 8 minutes. You just need to be in shape. What that means is per person, but you just need to be healthy. Your body needs to be healthy. You should be able to walk like a mile and it's fine. You should be able to jog a mile and not like die, keel over, to be honest. So there are different ways to do that, stay healthy, because it's just good for you, good for your body, good for your mind. And everybody can make time. People
Mhm.
just be BSing sometimes. I know you are watching TikTok at least 2 hours.
Yes.
One of those hours can go to working out. Not gonna lie.
Mhm. Oh, totally. Uh, and don't bullshit a bullshitter. That would be a cool class too. Is like how to tell if someone is lying or just so full of it. It's just, if it's not ringing true, then it's probably not true. And it would be cool to do some other kind of just social class. I know the most I had probably in college was just appropriate versus inappropriate workplace behavior. And of course, we would watch, some funny sitcoms that brought up amusing subjects like that and take notes. But it was I was glad we had that, because I feel like, do you also kind of notice that too? We talk about, hey, just be the best, be honest, and yet that can't prepare us for when inevitably we have a toxic workplace that we unfortunately become part of down the road, or we find out, hey, I did everything I was supposed to, but my superior was inappropriate, or my coworker just outed me and said some really messed up stuff that was not, it was false, but the rumors killed and I couldn't work there anymore. um it seems like there's just always some extra layer we could probably do to just realize, hey, how do you come back from that, instead of just threatening to sue each other, or say, oh, get over it, oh, change your name, change your resume. It's like, well, that's not good enough. I can't control if I meet a bully at a gym that I used to know at school. How do I react to that?
Yeah, you could definitely argue that social scenarios can be layered a little bit more,
Yeah.
for sure, in terms of conflict resolution. I definitely had a podcast episode and a conflict resolution expert came on to talk about that, more specifically in the political space. But in general, you can apply those techniques in a wide variety of
Any area, yeah.
scenarios. Um, for the most part, I'll say that when it comes down to like telling them that they're best and kind of give them hope, I do think hope is something that should continuously be taught. So I understand why you want to make them believe that they can achieve the best future, because it motivates them to try to achieve the hopeful future that they envision based off your words. So instilling hope will always be a good thing, and that should be the standard. But also giving them enough context to be able to maneuver towards that
Hmm.
goal will also be equally as important.
It really is hard. I mean, my mother would always recommend the whole sticks and stones, which I think is a losing streak because, who talks that way? And by the time you come up with the retort, you've already been punched in the face, And, my father would do the whole, hey, you can punch back. But see, I wasn't a fighter. So I was just like, it seems like we got to learn just other ways to be the bigger man. I got through it by just ignoring people, but that still ate me up years later. I was like, man, what would I say now? Or what would I do to stand my ground? Maybe, maybe that guy was a nice person, but they decided to be a jackass one day and they kept doing it because they were getting laughs from the class, not realizing what an insensitive jerk they were. It, it'd be cool to do it a different way and make them mature and man up and realize, hey, I got to stop this because someone actually got hurt. You know?
Yeah, the confidence is definitely a big part of it. Having confidence in yourself to kind of believe in who you are, that allows you to communicate pretty effectively against the other person.
Mhm.
Um, for the most part, I've always been a pretty confident person, so I never really had to deal with any of that.
Oh,
But
awesome.
being
Kudos.
confident also also means that you should be able to utilize your resources, um,
Yes.
in the sense that, I mean, if you have to, get other people involved. If they are really that much of a problem, get other people involved and nip this in the bud immediately. Make it very
Totally.
clear that this is not cool. So, in these situations, I know people are conditioned to an extent based on how they grew up to not ask for help, but
Right.
you're not going to go anywhere doing that. It's not going to
I'm,
help
I'm
anybody.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I have a relative who has had to we have we have offered ways to help him out. The caretaker who's seeing him has offered different ways and he's always pushing him aside and he keeps doing something that they're trying to avoid having him do, like fall on his face, or get a drink. That's not good for his heart. It's just amazing how many just feel like they are impervious. They have lied all their life. They have done ways to shake it off and get back up, but it's really nipping them in the butt. And it's just like, well, it's okay to ask for help if it's just once at least. What's the problem? Doesn't make you any weaker.
No, I definitely agree. And I mean, sometimes, from my perspective at the very least, no matter how much you care about the person, if they're not willing to accept the help, then at that point, for me at the very least, you just got to let them figure it out by themselves. Until they figure it out, they're not going to accept your help.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And it seems hard to just kind of even open up the dialogue. They will just say, nah, man. uh, um, are there any other things that you feel are still needing to be addressed before we go, I guess?
Um, I guess another thing to kind of bring up, just so more people are kind of informed about the issue, because this is the hot button issue right now. So I've been kind of repeating this pretty frequently, because people are, for the most part, pretty misinformed about the topic, because it will have ramifications down the line, similar to the
Hmm.
social media ban that I was talking about, is the stuff relating to TikTok, in the sense that TikTok ban may be put in place for the United States. And just to be very clear, if it hasn't happened already, the Senate will make a vote. And if the vote is approved by the Senate to get the bill passed, Joe Biden said he's already going to sign it. So it's up to the Senate as of right now.
Yeah.
TikTok will be banned in the United States of America unless ByteDance sells TikTok to a more than likely American corporation, whether that's Google, Apple, Microsoft, et cetera, et cetera. And that means that when TikTok is banned, that it will not be available in all these app stores, and you won't be able to update the app, and it'll eventually go mute over time. So the reason why I bring that up is there's a lot of discourse about it, and I want to be very clear. comparing America and China is stupid. Don't ever compare America and how it handles business
Yeah.
and corporations to how China does. We are very different governments and very different ways of handling business. So anybody who does that, oh, China does this, America, no, that's stupid. Don't do that. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
A,
It's
a legit criticism that you can put on the heads of the government is that there was a solution that was introduced called Project Texas, where they said they were going to put all the information on a cloud infrastructure of only all America data will be only accessible to Americans on this cloud. And ByteDance and TikTok do not have access to this. So this was a solution proposed and it has been ignored. So if you're concerned about information being given to ByteDance, which is a legitimate concern, but they offer a solution with Project Texas and you ignore it, it makes me think that this is more of a greed thing than a people's safety thing, in the sense that we want to own TikTok, so that's why we're doing this. That's what it feels like from my point of view. So
no, I like these type of topics. Is like there's this intent, but is it being executed that way? Is it being carried out that way? And if it's kind of like when there's all these financial aid solutions, but not enough people are being notified that it exists or where to find them. It's like, well, that's just as bad as having free money but not being able to give it away because no one shows up. It's just like, well, there are all these options, but something is not getting out. You can't just say, oh, people are dumb. Well, did you have a checklist that you checked off? No? Okay. It reminds me of staffing agencies. Every once in a while, I would see some that were pretty poorly reviewed, just noting how the front desk were very rude, or assigning you to a job you had clearly said, I'm not fit for. I don't do that kind of work. Or just being, again, just very unhelpful, which made you wonder, well, it couldn't be that hard to at least answer a question instead of just say, look at this website. Well, it's like not every website is specific or detailed. Kindness costs nothing.
yeah, I agree.
I've had it before. I do mobile security, and every once in a while I will get a bizarre question that's not in my forte, but instead of saying, don't know, man, leave me alone, I will, turn around and say, hey, we as security, we are not responsible for towing or something that is clearly a leasing office issue, but here is a number that is for the leasing office or is for a towing service if I happen to have it on me. Or I would just say, hey, ask your landlord. They might, this is a solution they might have. That was not part of this conversation. Wish I had more info.
No, definitely. At the very least, steer people in the right direction. That's 100%.
Give them a reason to say "Have a nice day" instead of "Thank you, have a nice day." With it's kind of like my sister would do this, and we would call her on it every once in a while, where she would, instead of acknowledging, she would often say, "Okay." But, you shouted that way. That's clearly I want you to shut up, as opposed to "No, I got it. We're not going to have this conversation again." In fact, I find that saying different alternatives, that tells people he went that far. He's not being smart ass, he's not being clever. He, even a simple 10-4 or some other alternate way is letting people know I am dialed in. I heard you, and I'm giving you an extra acknowledgement. Completely understood. Justifiably so. Or I heard every word, or even repeat it back. Then there's no doubt.
Yeah.
I did it with my boss one time, and he gave me a thumbs up in the group chat. He's like, see, this is what kind of response I want. You're not being a yes man. You actually repeated what I said, even simpler. Client is very angry. They are not good at using their words. Let's go the extra mile to acknowledge them and do this or that task this way. And it really is amazing how, again, we all want the same thing. We just don't always make the effort to say what we want. It's easy to be the rude bar patron than it is apparently to understand. That would be a cool thing before we go, to kind of acknowledge people on, if you're going to get in the restaurant business, what is the meaning of tipping? Because I without fail, I will encounter people. I would even see someone who would compare it. Oh, what are you, a stripper? Like, no, that's how they get paid in the restaurant industry. You are under minimum wage. It's like $5 an hour. It's not good. And it'd be cool to understand. Is like, hey, be good to tip for this occasion. How much? No more than 5 or 10. That should be okay. Instead of, oh, they're greedy. They're a whore. They want this. It's like, oh, that's how they make a living, is for tips.
Yeah, tipping is a pretty contentious issue.
I used to do valet, and we would always have an issue. There would always be some customer who refused to pay. And sometimes we got better because I was at a stand that happened to say it's $7 to park. But then we also had to remind, okay, if they're only there for like 10 seconds, they don't have to pay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
It's under an hour.
It'll make everybody's life difficult.
Yeah. And I had another relative who was that way. They would be like, oh, that person, they're trying to scam me. It's like, well, kind of like a movie rating or a warning about a class that might divide someone politically, that there was like 5 different warnings. Hey, this requires this kind of tip. I don't know. You don't have to pay it. We're not saying you got to do that, but at least maybe educate people about how different industries work, instead of just say, I do have the dough or I don't have it and I'm going to leave rudely.
Yeah. Just be respectful at the very
Totally,
least.
because we got it good. There's so many restaurants who will refuse to take your plate if you haven't finished most of your meal. So, I mean, can you imagine how many people on a daily basis have a half finished steak and are going to just throw it away instead of take it home in a doggy bag?
Yeah, I think it's dumb. Just take it. Just
Take it. It's not going just and heat it up tomorrow. It's not going to be any lesser in its taste. This has been a delight. When does Purple Political Breakdown air, for those who want to know about the show?
Yeah, so the kind of main episodes that drop would be Mondays and Thursday, 8 a.m. EST. Now, however, I have been transitioning to a daily podcast episode schedule because there's always something to talk about politically. Now, these episodes are much shorter. Sometimes I do have guests come on my podcast. Recently, I've had a candidate to run for senator in California for the Republican Party come on my episode to talk politics. So I have a conversation pretty frequently. So if you need a morning jolt of a political topic and get some nuanced perspective, because that is what we're here to do. We are the Purple Political Breakdown. Then, yeah, you can listen to me, Purple Political Breakdown, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere, 8 a.m. EST, every single day.
Sweet. Thank you for an hour of your time. And I applaud anyone who wants to have their voice heard and merge their heads with other guests.
Yeah, these conversations are important. 100%.
Yeah. Godspeed to you out there.
All right. Excellent. Appreciate you having me on. I think it was an interesting conversation.
Absolutely. I try.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening. It's a jacked up